personally, as I was knowing I was coming here today and thinking about what brings me joy at this point in my life, I really have boiled it down to three things. And one is selflessness, the other is trust, and the third is iconic moments. And I want to share just a few stories and some thoughts about each one of those as we spend our time together today. Because I really believe these are the three things that for me bring me deep purpose and meaning in my life, and I hope none of this is going to be new to you, but if nothing else, maybe affirmation in a way in which it can help you as a reminder, possibly. So I was talking to one of my friends the other day, and her son has become a new father. And of course, as he's becoming a new father, we were both laughing about the fact that at the Easter lunch, both the new mom and dad with the baby came to the Easter lunch, both exhausted. Mother celebrating that she actually got a shower that day. Do you remember these moments? And the young man, who is the new father, during Easter lunch, literally began to spill it over with everything that was going on in their lives, to the point where the mother was cringing, like, we don't need to let everybody know all of this. And he was talking about the fact that one evening the baby was not easily pacified. And just as a note, this was a baby that is being nursed exclusively, and many of us who've nursed exclusively know what the situation is like. It almost leaves the dad out of the picture until we get to a point where we're like, oh, I can pump now. And this is actually going to help in some of the trading here and there. But at this point in time, that was not happening in this household. And the mama was exhausted, and all she could think about was the fact that the next day, this young man was going to be going to work, and she was never going to be able to keep it together to be able to take care of the baby the next day, and literally said, I need 2 hours of sleep, and handed the baby over to the daddy. And it was a full admission at this Easter lunch where he said, I couldn't control the baby from crying. And I was walking around, and I was becoming impatient, which got me very scared because I did not know what to do. He said, even at one point, and this is where my girlfriend went, I may just leave the room because I cannot believe he is sharing this. He said, I sat down and I lifted up my shirt and I thought that maybe, just maybe, I could convince the baby to suckle for just a little bit and not really know that it was not as long. And this was the best part. The uncle sitting at the table went, so you think you're the only man who's ever tried that? And all that was shared, of course, my girlfriend and I are hee-haw laughing because we have raised our babies together. Literally, I tried to convince her to have a third one, and she would not. And I couldn't believe she did not want to do this together because we've done it together for the last 2 times, so why not one more time? But I'm the one she helped raise this third one with, and probably she could take some claim to it. And we laughed about the fact that, oh my goodness, they're finally realizing how much we've done with it for them in our lives. You know, you sort of take that moment of, okay, this is really happening. And they begin to see, oh my gosh, look at how much my parents have done for me. It's interesting because, as shared by Catherine, Wayne and I actually have been married 30 years. We waited a long time before we had kiddos. We waited a long time, and I remember that moment of thinking, I'm exhausted. I cannot believe my parents did this. I will never look at them the same way, and every time I see them, all I'm going to say is, thank you, oh, I'm so sorry I did this, and I'm so sorry, and I cried through every dinner because some boy didn't ask me out to go to the party, or that I wasn't getting the grades I wanted, or that I needed this or needed that. I will never complain, and I will always be grateful for that. So it's interesting because when I think about all of this, I begin to realize that it was the first time in my life as a mom, and I think many of you would agree, that you realize it's no longer about you. It's that first moment of realizing I am going to be selfless the rest of my life in a way that I didn't understand what being selfless really meant in our world until that moment happened. And whether you have children or not, I know you have likely had a moment where you went, okay, this is what this means to be completely selfless in this way. And I believe that that is an important thing for all of us. And I am concerned, and Catherine gave me the stage, so I'm going to share some concern I have about our culture today. Because I'm concerned our culture doesn't want to be selfless. That a lot of the things that we're hearing that are happening in society is that we're not focused outward. We are really focused inward. And that is very hard for me to swallow because I think about Jesus Christ and how he has told us to be servant leaders in everything we do and for us to be selfless. And I think, how can I be an example, even if it's just through my own actions and maybe not my words, that I can show others or I can speak to others in a way that will help them understand that that is not what is going to bring you joy. There are so many other things in life that will bring you joy and give you purpose and meaning in a way that maybe at this point in time you don't recognize. And I know that this is not just me thinking this, because I don't, in the world that I live in now with Heartland Forward, everything is very data-laden, you need to know. I have my dear intern with me today, Kennedy Mars, who joins, and she will tell you everything is very numbers-oriented and very economics-focused, as it should be, because the data really informs us. And I did a little bit of digging, and you all may have heard of Pew, and they do a lot of different types of research. And here is some of the research that I found. Religious faith has declined in the United States over the past few decades, with more Americans identifying as atheists, agnostics, or unaffiliated with any particular religion. According to a 2021 Pew Research Center survey, 29% of Americans identify as religiously unaffiliated, up from 16%. So I just said 29% in 2021. That is up from 16% in 2007. The decline in religious faith can be attributed, they say, to a variety of factors, including changing cultural values, increased secularization, and greater access to information. Marriage. What did Pew say about marriage? Marriage rates have also been declining in the United States for several decades. According to the National Center for Health Statistics, the marriage rate in the U.S. fell to a record low in 2019. And listen to this, with 6.5 marriages per 1,000 people. 6.5 marriages per 1,000 people. The decline in marriage rates can be attributed to a variety of factors, including changing cultural attitudes towards marriage, the rise of cohabitation, and economic factors that make it more difficult for young people to establish themselves financially. Now let's move on to the last one, and that's birth rates in the United States. They have been declining for several years. In 2020, the birth rate fell to its lowest level in more than a century, with only 55.8 births per 1,000 of women who were childbearing age. The decline in birth rates can be attributed to a variety of factors, including changing cultural attitudes. We've heard this repeatedly, right? With marriage, with all of these, with religion, changing cultural attitudes towards parenthood, the increasing cost of raising a child. And by the way, don't we all know who have children? It's not when they're young that they're so expensive. With 3 kids, at my kids' age 23, 20, and 16, I'm like, holy cow, why didn't anybody tell me this is when they're most expensive? The diapers are nothing. And by the time you have your second or third, you're like, I need a diaper and a pacifier. I need a purse. I don't need any of the other garbage that comes with all of this. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. And a little bit of dirt, no, it doesn't matter. We don't have to all have everything else that with the first baby you typically need to have. And then also, not only the cost, but the availability of birth control. Now, I know in all of what I've just shared, there's a lot of controversy, right? I just wanted to put the research out there because I can tell you that I have a child who's cohabitating with another person, and you can only push your children so far to be like, now you know. So he'll call on a day and he'll say, oh yeah, Hannah's here. Oh, and I slept on the couch. Yeah, ha ha ha, I know better than that. So, all of that being said, I really feel like that if people don't want to marry, they shouldn't marry. And if people don't want to have children, my heavens, we don't want them to have children. But in the same breath, I really do wish that people would think about what would bring them joy and how they could look at the examples around them, even if it's not within their own family. Maybe it's an example of a friend for which they have, or some other example that they may have that surrounds them to show this is not such a bad thing. And it does require work. And it's never 50-50. And it can't be tit for tat, because we all know in the end it evens out. It evens out. And you can't live in a relationship or even with children in that way. But there is great joy that comes from knowing that your purpose is for a greater good, and that selflessness is not a bad thing as you're thinking about it. It's really one of those things that will provide such a positive impact. One of the best examples, as I bring close to selflessness, is Mother Teresa. Wayne and I are both Catholics. We were raised Catholic, so you can imagine I sort of navigate to the saints and to Mother Teresa quite a bit. She spent her entire life serving others, especially the poorest of the poor. And she once said, I am a little pencil in the hand of a writing God who is sending a love letter to the world. I am a little pencil in the hand of a writing God who is sending a love letter to the world. I hope that y'all will each think about being that pencil in the work that you do each day, because she truly understood selflessness and what was required of it, with her own desires and setting aside and sometimes her own ambitions, and really focusing on what the needs were for others. I mentioned the word trust. Every year I'm one of those people, I know some of us in the room are those people too, and for those of us that are like, oh, that would never work for me, you have to lean into what works for you. But about the end of November, I start thinking, what's going to be my word?
Yes.
And it has really become a moment of celebration for me, because I knew a long time ago when I said I was going to lose another 25 pounds after going into menopause, I was like, it doesn't happen. I can work on this as hard as I want to work on this, and that 25 pounds is not coming off. I can try everything in the world, starving myself to death or running 1,000,000 miles, and it's not going to change my body at this point in time. But a word does make a difference. And this is why I love my word. I've been doing this for 9 years now. Is that, you live a word every year, through a whole year, 365 days, and guess what? That word continues on into the next year. All 9 years that I have been doing this, those words live with me. And what makes it even better for me is that every year, every password I change to my word. I'm not going to tell you all the secrets, because I don't want you to know what I'm telling. All of my confidential information, but it's usually like the word with the year and then some type of symbol. So every day as I'm going into anything, I have to remind myself what my word is. This year is focus. Last year was prepare. The word before that was nudge. The word before that was gratitude, and the word before that was brave. Now, why was that word brave? So Catherine told you about a bit by my career, and that was way too much. That was embarrassing. That just means I'm old. That's when you start hearing about it, it's like, and you're old. But it was interesting because I had really just started really getting in the routine of doing this, and it was during a Christmas season, and I was very unsettled, and I was ready to change in this season of my career. At Mitchell, I had ultimately been there 10 years, and predating that, I had been with Elise 10 years prior to that. And she and I were always setting aside the fact that we were better friends than we were colleagues, and if anything ever got in between us as colleagues, we would settle and be friends before anything else. That was how important our relationship was to us. But I was coming on to my 10th anniversary at Mitchell, and I had pretty much been told to fix things, right? So, Blake, you're not going to be in charge of this team, and let's figure out what's going on. Let's get our margin better. Or let's figure out what the client is really needing in this space and help this team in working to make sure that we're providing that to the client. Because when you're in an agency, you are at the mercy of the client, and whatever they need and they want at whatever hour. And I can remember that my boys were all hunting, and I was taking the Christmas tree down, and I had not landed on a word. And what you need to know is that I am the provider for our family. So let's just settle that right here. So you can imagine, as I am talking about this idea that I know I need to make a career change because it is gnawing. And I've had the Christmas season, you know, the holiday season, things just slow down just enough for you to be a little bit more reflective in your life. And I kept thinking, how can I just walk away? I have multiple sclerosis, so the idea of not having health insurance is a big deal to me, but more to my family, because I have to be able to function as the provider of my family. So you can imagine everything that's whirling around, and I am on a ladder at the top of the tree, and I went, I have to be brave. Why am I not trusting God? He is telling me that it is time for change. And I am essentially telling him I don't trust him. And he's telling me that I need to do this now. Why am I not moving forward? That was a Saturday. On Sunday, I sent my CEO an email saying, I need to meet with you in the morning. I walked in and I said, it's time to leave. And she goes, to go where? And I said, I think it's time for Blake to close her chapter here at Mitchell. No, there are no bad feelings. And that was one of the things. I didn't want there to be bad feelings, and I didn't want to hang a shingle out being like, Blake's looking for a job, and for people to go, well, what's going on with the agency? Because I would never have wanted to put a black mark, because there were no black marks to put on the agency. They were doing phenomenal work. It just was time for me to walk away and to think, okay, I have to trust. So I stayed on as long as they asked me to stay on. It was about another month. And people would say, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. And they'd say, you mean you don't? No, I don't have a job. I could work at Chick-fil-A, I guess. I mean, I am all about telling people my pleasure. I think I would do it. They go, my pleasure. Sure, you want more nuggets? I will get you more nuggets. Or watch your children, because they're going to hurt each other up in the thing that they play in. But anyway, I really was at that place, and I thought, well, and I could work at Dillard's, and I would say this to the Dillards, we probably would have words, because the Fayetteville Dillards is not nearly as nice as the Rogers Dillards, and that bothers me. And I want the mirrors to make you look good in clothes. You know, when you go into those dressing rooms, they don't make you look good. And I think that those mirrors could be changed and the lighting could be changed to make you look a little better. So I was like, I think that we would probably have words, but I would still work there if I had to. And I didn't have to, because for some reason the phone started ringing and emails started coming in, and I really started consulting, and it was so much fun. And I was able to pay for health insurance, which, by the way, until you have to pay for your own health insurance, you don't realize what a racket it is. I'm just going to say for those of us now who have health insurance paid for us, God bless you. I feel blessed that I have health insurance, but it is, for people who do not have it, it is a thing. And every time I start a job, I think, okay, well, that's going to pay for my health insurance. Now onward to the next job, because I've got to be able to pay for food. I've got to be able to pay for all of the other things that we need, and all these teenagers that cost us so much money. And so it was that moment identification that I realized that I have to trust. My mother is 74, and my grandmother is 96, and they worry themselves into a lather. And I spend a lot of time saying, Mom, please do not worry. Please do not worry. Please do not worry. Because every time we say we're worrying about something, we are not allowing ourselves to release that and being given permission that our Lord has a plan for us. In this moment, that's part of the plan. Whether we like it or not, or whether it's answering what we want or not, it is part of the plan. So we have to say thank you. That this is what is meant. And I may not understand it today, but it's going to work out. In most of our situations in life, not all of them, if you think back to the times through which you worried, how many times did you say, oh, well, that didn't work out. That was awful. That was so much worse than I ever thought it was going to be. Now, we have all been in situations where that has happened, right? Where we thought, that was unimaginable. I never thought that would happen. But in more cases than not, it is not unmanageable. And you sit and you think, I really, as my mother would say, perseverated over it. Look that word up, because I had to. in a way that was unnecessary, almost in an obsessive compulsive way. And if we trusted, sometimes we would allow our brains to think more creatively and to be open to other ideas if we did that. I want to leave you with this idea on trust after selflessness with a prayer that I cannot tell you how many times I've printed off and stuck it in a card, or that I have written down, or that I have emailed to friends in times that have been hard, because it is one of my most favorite prayers, and it reminds me repeatedly to relinquish that worry and to trust. Let nothing disturb you. Let nothing frighten you. All things are passing. God never changes. Patience obtains all things. Whoever has God lacks nothing. God alone suffices. And that is Saint Teresa of Avila. It's a wonderful prayer. Regardless of your faith, I think it's one of those wonderful prayers. Now, I want to speak just for a moment, I'm watching Catherine stand, about iconic moments. And this is all going back towards the fact that trust, as well as selflessness, are all working together. And then iconic moments are those moments where I may not have control of everything, but boy, I have control about bringing joy to other people. And when I take a moment to bring joy to somebody else, it can mean the world. I was at Harps not long ago on the day, probably the last day that we had ice and weather, and I was going, sorry for those of you who don't decide that you need a bottle of wine when there's going to be weather, but you're going to be in the house with a bunch of kids. So I stopped for the most important things, a bottle of wine, a six-pack of beer, the beer for my husband, a bottle of wine for me, and of course did our groceries. And I was checking out, and as I was checking out, there was a woman that was between us, and she had soda and milk and eggs, all of those things, and bread that you have to get even if you already have it. You think I'm going to be snowed in for the rest of my life and I need these things. But I was watching her on her phone, and the man, because the line was so long, said, "Ma'am, if you will just stand there and try to find a method of payment," because she kept saying, "I think I can find my Apple Pay. I'm just going to hold this on the register." You know how you can hold something on a register and then the next person can get checked through. And I'll take care of you. And the man between us was going through, and I looked at the guy and I said, "How much are her groceries?" She hardly had anything, and he goes, $17. And I said, "I will pay for that. Let her go to get in the car," because the weather was coming and she was worried. And the woman looked at me and she said, "What is your name?" And I said, "My name is Blake." "What is your name?" And she said, "My name is Deb." And I said, "Go get in your car and get home, because the weather is coming and I drive from Bentonville, so I was already, kind of sliding in by the seat of my pants, knowing the weather was going to be hitting." And by the time I got home and I got settled that evening, I went on Facebook and I had a message from somebody from church. And this is what it said. "Did you buy grocery for someone today? Her debit card was compromised, and then her new one was also compromised. She is a super sweet lady that works in my department, and I know what it meant to her. Thank you. She needs a few breaks in life." I responded, "Yes, how did you know?" And she posted on Facebook about a woman named Blake, wondering if I knew her, and I knew it had to be you. And I'm not telling you that because of me and the action I did. There's all kinds of things I'd like to say about this, like, this is why I tell my children to behave, because you never ever know when somebody is going to know who you are and what you're supposed to be doing. But it is that moment of raising your head and saying, I don't need to be worried about me. What's going on around me? And how can I help this person? Because for her, she needed that. And how embarrassing it was that she was standing at the end of the checkout line with all these people trying to rush through to get to their cars, to get home, to get settled before the storm hit. And all she had was $17 worth of groceries and couldn't figure out how it was going to get paid. And so I would challenge you, from selflessness, from trusting God, and from an iconic moments perspective, think about how you can create those iconic moments for other people. And that's not iconic like, oh my gosh, you won the lottery. And by the way, most people who win the lottery, they end up losing all that money anyway. Remember, we started off saying, money does not bring you joy. And people, it doesn't bring you joy. But how can you create those iconic moments? Because we do know that is something that can bring joy in others people's lives, and maybe that is the example that somebody else needs in order to pass that on from a ripple effect. Selflessness, trust, and iconic moments are interconnected if you think about it. Because when we are selfless, we earn the trust of others. When we trust others and we trust in God, we are willing to take risks and create those iconic moments. And when we create those iconic moments, we inspire others to be selfless and trustworthy.